Ancient Greece. Ancient Greece is a very loose term, but it includes several different time periods in the Hellenic history. The story of Hercules, the voyages of Argo, are usually referenced in the late Bronze period. Before that, there was the Neolithic, Early Bronze period, and Minoan period. The Trojan Wars are right in the middle of the Late Bronze era. Most people, however, would associate Greece with the Archaic, Classical, and Hellenistic periods. Archaic period. Most people would recall the struggle between the ancient Greek cities and the Persian Empire from popular movies such as 300 and 300 Rise of an Empire. During this period, the wars between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire were fought, as well as later wars between Athens and Sparta. Before the city-states were formed, people lived in small villages. But as the populations of those villages grew, so did the need for new buildings and fortifications. Several large villages merged to create new types of enclosures, called cities. Cities were very different, as they could raise larger armies, elect governments, and conduct trade on a grander scale. Wars and unions were formed with other cities, and new colonies were founded throughout the Mediterranean. Most people associate the city-states with democracies, but that wasn't the case everywhere. Democracy comes from the word demos, which means the entire citizen body, and kratos, which means rule. Athens was maybe a minority when it comes to power of the people. Not every citizen was allowed to vote, especially women. It is believed that the male citizens of Athens numbered some 60,000. Their assembly discussed important topics such as trades, wars, and unions. They also had a sort of a council, or bowl, which consisted of 500 citizens, who were chosen to serve for 1 year with a limit of 2 years. You could vote if you were 18 or over, but magistrate and senior positions were limited to those of 30 years or over. There were several other forms of rule in ancient Greece: monarchy, tyranny, and oligarchy. Monarchies were extremely rare, but the main difference between a monarchy and a tyranny is that in a tyranny, once the tyrant is dead, his rule ends. In a monarchy, the power is hereditary, or not in the case of Sparta, which had 2 kings. Famous examples of monarchies are Macedonia, where Alexander the Great ruled, and Epirus from Epirus. Tyrannies were usually formed when an individual took over the power in a city or a region by force. Famous tyrants could be found throughout ancient Greece: Pisistratus of Athens, Periander in Corinth, and others. One of the most famous tyrants is Draco, the first legislator in ancient Athens. The first legal code was published around 621 BC, and it was unusually harsh. Even petty crimes were punishable by death. Ouch. Imagine stealing an apple from a garden. But Draco gave the name from draconian law, meaning extremely harsh, and punitive law. An oligarchy is a type of government where only a select few or select groups govern. They were the most common of all the forms of government within the city-states. Athens also became an oligarchy following its defeat by Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. Thebes is another example. Greek society. On top of the society, we have the aristoi, best people. They had money, political influence, and power. They were usually split into factions based on family connections. Next came the citizens. They had land, although a lot smaller than the aristoi, but they still had the right to elect officials and participate in the politics of the polis, city, also known as the perikoi, dwellers round about. Finally come the slaves. They could be acquired either through conquests, kidnap, or simply if someone had fallen in debt. Called douloi, they made up anywhere between 15 and 40% of the total populace. They had no rights, only responsibilities. Stadiums and amphitheaters were some of the few buildings which Greeks created. It is said that the stadium at Olympia had the capacity for 45,000 spectators. Unfortunately, in the cities, there was no central planning which contributed to the creation of small maze-like streets. The exception, of course, were the colonies such as Magna Graecia. Greek builders were highly regarded in the ancient world. They were able to produce some of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Namely, the Temple of Artemis of Ephesus, currently in Turkey, dedicated to the goddess of the hunt, the moon, wild animals, and woods, as well as young women. Made from marble, it measured 377 feet by 180 feet, and it featured sculptures of Amazon warriors. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, created by Ptolemy I. It stood at the port of Alexandria and it helped guide ships to the port. The Colossus of Rhodes, it stood 100 feet high and it was depicting the titan named Helios, the sun. It took the Greek sculptor Charles of Blundus and his men 12 years to complete the 110-foot tall statue. And the statue of Zeus at Olympia, it was made of gold, marble, and other fine materials. Thevidius, the renowned Greek sculptor, was tasked with bringing Zeus to life. The seated statue was 40 feet tall and held in its hand Nike, the goddess of victory. Greek diet. During ancient times, Greeks would have a varied diet. Bread, wine, olives, and olive oil were quite common. Ancient Greeks also liked cheese, lentils, chickpeas, but also fruits such as apples and figs. Also, vegetarianism started in ancient Greece. There were several movements such as the Orphicism and Pythagoreanism, named after Pythagoras. They were usually based on the idea of reincarnation and that eating a fellow animal would be akin to devouring the soul of a friend. Greek philosophy. Ancient Greeks were not only excellent builders, they were also the first philosophers. One of the most famous ones are Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Pythagoras. Pythagoras combined science, religion, and mathematics. From the famous Pythagoras' theorem, which states that the square of the longest side of a right triangle equals the sum of the squares of the 2 other sides. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, had several famous students, one of which was Plato, who later taught Aristotle. Socrates challenged a lot of the norms of his day and era, one of which was that one should think for himself and challenge society's dogmas. For this, he was sentenced to death. Plato left Athens after the death of Socrates. He would return after several years. One of his most famous works is the Theory of Ideas. He also created an academy in Athens that endured for nearly 1,000 years, where great minds would gather and study ancient texts. Aristotle was Plato's student for 20 years, and he would later on become Alexander the Great's teacher. He developed the study of logic and science, which held firm over Western science till the time of Galileo Galilei, despite being proven wrong on numerous occasions. Greek religion. Greeks were extremely religious and had numerous gods, much like the Egyptians. It was believed that they all occupied the sacred mountain, Mount Olympus. Greek mythology and heroes' tales are quite common, and we'll go through them in more detail in a following video. Zeus, the king of the Olympian gods, the son of Cronus and Rhea, the god of lightning and thunder. Cronus was constantly afraid that he was going to lose his power from his children, so he would devour them as soon as they were born. However, them being immortal, they would just live in his stomach. Rhea managed to save Zeus by wrapping a rock like a baby. Zeus was brought to Crete, where he was raised. He would later fight Cronus and the Titans with the help of the other Olympian gods and defeat them. The Titans and his father were banished to the depths of the Tartarus. There are a number of movies and games based on that idea. Poseidon, the god of sea and rivers, also the bringer of earthquakes and destruction. One of the original three gods, Zeus and Hades being the other two, he had magnificent golden mansions beneath the sea. Usually he is depicted with a trident which was created by the Cyclops. Hades was the god of the underworld. He was also responsible for the dead souls. His trusted companion was Cerberus, the three-headed dog. Those that had lived just the lives would be those taken to the Elysian field and forget all bad things. Those that had lived the bad life would be brought to Tartarus, to eternal torment. Hera was the wife of Zeus and the queen of the gods on Mount Olympus. Although the goddess of marriage and family, she is famous for her jealousy over Zeus and how she punished all the women he had been in contact with and their offspring. She is also the mother of Ares, the god of war, Hebe, the god of youth, and Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth. She also famously gave birth alone to Hephaestus, the god of metallurgy. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and desire. It is believed that she was born close to Cyprus. She is often cited for the starting of the Trojan War, and she made Helen fall in love with Paris of Troy. Ares, the god of war, also from the famous game before he was killed by Kratos. He was quite aggressive, and his constant desire for conflict was notorious. He was highly regarded in Sparta, and he faces numerous heroes, most famously Hercules, who defeated several of Ares' children. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, war, and crafts. She was Zeus's favorite daughter and the name-bearer of ancient Athena. She possessed a very high regard for justice and is part of numerous myths and legends where is seen helping heroes, including Hercules and Odysseus. The city of Athena had a giant temple dedicated to her, the Parthenon, which stood atop at the city. Thank you for watching, and please stay connected so you don't miss out on our next video.